Greetings! It is I, Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the Pathfinder role-playing game system. We last left off, I was talking about environmental rules. Things you can encounter in the environment, which are going to do bad stuff to you, generally speaking. Let's talk about falling. Your character, at some point in time, is going to fall. For every 10 feet you fall, you take a d6 point of damage. This maxes out at 20 d6, 200 feet of falling. You don't take any extra damage after that. Now, should you take lethal damage as part of your fall you're taking, you fall prone. You basically go thwomp and you're lying on the ground. Let's talk about reducing this damage in some way. There are some things you can do. First off, if you're jumping down deliberately, the first 10 feet of damage you take is converted to non-lethal damage. You were trying to jump down. Hurrah! You can also make an acrobatics check DC 15 to further ignore 10 foot of falling. So you can combine both of those together, and if you fall 20 feet, you make your acrobatics, you only take 1d6 points of non-lethal. Not bad, and you wouldn't be prone at that point in time. You didn't take lethal damage. Now, also, falling into soft material like mud also converts further a 10 foot of falling to non-lethal. This does compound with the other two, so you could possibly get 2d6 points of non-lethal damage if you're diving down 30 feet into mud and making your acrobatics check. Now, a spellcaster could possibly cast a spell when falling. If they're falling at least 500 feet, then you can cast a spell, unless it's immediate action like Featherfall. Then go ahead and cast it and probably save yourself. The thing to note about this is, if you cast a teleportation spell, or something similar, or a similar type of spell, this does not change your momentum. So you might teleport somewhere else where you're not falling any farther, but guess what? You're still going at really high speeds and are going to smack into things. Let's talk about falling into water, because this works differently than others. Falling into water. If you are falling into at least 10 feet of water, the first 30 feet that you're falling does no damage. After that, for the next 20 feet, every 10 feet you fall deals a d3 non-lethal damage. So about 50 feet, you'd take 2d3 non-lethal damage if the water is at least 10 feet deep. Of course, beyond there, it starts once again going into lethal damage, and it works exactly the same as before, every 10 feet, doing 1d6 points of lethal damage. You can dive from any depth into the water. This requires either a swim check DC 15 or acrobatics check DC 15 when diving into the water. This avoids damage. You need the water 10 feet deep for every 30 feet you're diving. So the much farther up you are diving, the deeper the water has to be for this actually to be successful. Or you're just going back to the damage rules. It does increase the DC. For every 50 feet you are diving down, increase the DC by 5 also. So at very, 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 very high distances, if you're diving down into the water, it becomes very difficult to do so successfully and not hurt yourself. Let's talk about falling objects. Because as much as you can fall, things can fall on you also. Falling objects deal damage to you based upon both their size and the distance they're dealing. You add those two together. We already figured out distance, let's talk about size of it. There's a chart in the book that lists the different sizes and the damage they would deal when they would hit you. Of course, this all assumes that's going to be some kind of hard material like rock. If it's a softer material, it will deal half damage. Also, depending on how far it falls, does alter this a little bit too. If it falls less than 30 feet, then whatever that chart says, half that for the amount of damage it's dealing to you. If it's higher up than 150 feet, double it. Also make sure that you're going to note the amount of damage that object is dealing to you, it will deal to itself. Now you can use a falling object as a ranged attack. It will be a ranged touch attack with an increment of 20 feet, that you're basically chucking it down at someone. Now this isn't to say that someone couldn't get out of the way of a ranged thrown object at them. If you're sort of throwing it down and they are aware of it coming at them, they get a reflex DC 15 to basically get half damage from this, to sort of jump out of the way. They have to know that it's coming for them effectively, though. Now let's finish up today by talking about heat. Heat does non-lethal damage to you. When you take non-lethal damage from heat, you cannot recover from it until you cool down. Otherwise, this damage cannot be healed. If you should take non-lethal damage equal to your hit points, heat starts dealing lethal damage to you. Let's talk about the levels of heat. Hot. This is 90 Fahrenheit or higher. Every hour you're without in this area, you have to make a fortitude save DC 15 +1 for every previous check you had made. If you fail it, you take 1d4 points of non-lethal damage from the heat. If you're wearing heavy clothing or metal armor, you get a -4 penalty to this saving throw. If you're trained in survival, you might get a bonus to this, which you might be able to give to your friends. As I said, if your non-lethal damage becomes equal to your total hit points, you start taking 1d4 points of lethal damage every hour. No save. Alright, let's talk about severe heat. This is 110 degrees Fahrenheit or more. You're going to be making those fortitude saves that I talked about every 10 minutes. DC 15 +1 per every previous check. Failure means 1d4 points of non-lethal damage. Heavy clothes, metal armor, -4. Survival could give you a bonus. So pretty much like before, though a lot more often. Same as before, if you max out, you start taking lethal damage. The difference here is if you start taking non-lethal damage from heat at this point in time, you begin to suffer from heat stroke. You gain the fatigue condition, which can only be removed once you've healed up all the non-lethal damage dealt by this heat. So you get an extra effect at severe heat. Let's talk about extreme heat. This could be extreme temperatures. This could be getting close to fire, boiling water, or lava, being in the general area of them. This is breathing in superheated air. You will automatically, no save, take 1d6 points of lethal damage every minute you are exposed to extreme heat. This is 140 degree Fahrenheit air or higher. This is incredibly hot. It is scalding you. This is fire damage you're taking. 1d6 points of fire damage every minute you're in this area. This doesn't mean you get away without making saves. In addition to this lethal damage I'm taking, I must make a fortitude save every 5 minutes, DC 15 +1 per each previous check, or take that 1d4 non-lethal damage. So it works just the same as before, the save, except I'm also taking lethal damage every minute. Heavy clothes and armor give the same exact effects to you, once again, of the -4. Now, boiling water. You might be exposed to it. If you get hit by boiling water, you take 1d6 points of scalding damage to you. If you're immersed in boiling water, 10d6 points of scalding damage. Interesting things to mention here because we're talking about boiling water. So that's it for today. I talked first about falling, which I talked about falling just onto the ground. It hurts you a lot. Falling into water. You might be able to avoid the damage. I talked about falling objects. They squish you. You might be able to reflex out of the way for avoiding a little bit of it, or maybe you might get lucky and avoid it altogether. Important note here, if a falling object is part of a trap, consider it part of that trap and use trap rules. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, oh, something falls off a cliff, or, oh, something pushed something off a cliff at me. Both are falling objects and don't count as traps. Both do you damage. I finished up by talking about heat. If you keep putting in hotter and hotter places, it's terrible. You're going to have some problems with this in a desert. It could get worse. You could get to the point in time where you're standing next to lava and your lungs are burning. Good for you. Not good for you. In the next episode, I'm going to dive into some more environmental things that you can encounter, which are probably going to try to kill you. Most of them tend to be very negative to your very existence in certain ways. All are very interesting to encounter in the course of the game and good to know about, but try to kill you. Regardless, if you have any questions, comments, anything you would say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It's just support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.